Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Carolina Jackson-Ward. I'm the product manager for Project Place at PlanU, and I'm here to talk to you about Lean Agile and give you some Kanban as well thrown in there. So this is the agenda. First, I want to briefly tell you a little bit about Project Place as our background and why this is an area where we are very, very interested in talking. And then we go into the Lean and Agile and the collaboration trend around Kanban. And then I'll do a quick summary of this. So we were founded in 1998 by 3 researchers from Sweden who were very interested to see how the quite new internet technology could help the basic human drive to collaborate and achieve things together. And they found that particularly in the project context that they could find some use. So they founded Project Place. It was one of the world's first SaaS online cloud solutions before the terminology for this was really set. To date, we've had about 2,200 and 2,350 projects run in the software. And for us, a key metric is uptime, because if our customers can't access their data, then we are of no value to them. So this is something that we look at and we're proud of. And the average service uptime is 99.97%, which includes planned downtime. And we have more than 1.1 million registered users. And this is basically what we do. Our contribution to the world. We do project management and execution, document collaboration, and team and task collaboration. So I was talking about the background to Project Place, and this is a little bit goes into the whole thought about non-linear management and our interest as a company in the way that people actually work and work best together. The Speed Shack Theory is a very interesting book, recommended, and this was the core of Project Place. It's what inspired us to understand that the importance that everyone can follow what's happening and commit to the task that needs to be done and to each other. So let's talk about Lean and Agile. But a little bit about the background then to Lean and Agile. It all started with something called non-linear management, which was a thought process in major universities in America of management techniques and strategies. And they started to appear in the 50s. And Toyota was probably the first company fortunate enough or unfortunate enough, but after the Second World War, they were in a situation in Japan where there were a lot of problems. They'd lost the war, resources were scarce, they had basically no industry, and they needed to make that leap. But they also had no baggage. So whereas the situation was hard in one aspect, they could start implementing new and drastic strategies. So at Toyota, they took this nonlinear management, and as the first company in the world, really trying to apply it to a real situation, something that had just been theories, and they wanted to apply it into a real production company. And they have been very successful over the past 50 years. They are the only car manufacturer who had never had a loss. Well, they had 1 year, but other than that, they have been by far the most profitable car company in the world, most successful. So Toyota Production System was so successful that people started looking at what is it that they do right, and Lean then became sort of the academic implementation of the Toyota Production System. So we started with academia, then we went into sort of a test phase in Toyota where they took these strategies, these ideas, and made them into a more full system, and then on that again you built the academia of Lean. So that's lean, and agile is another big trend that we've seen, and it comes from lean comes from the production system from Toyota, and lean comes from software development, where some of the central concepts of lean, such as waste and really taking full responsibility for the work that goes on under your control, were then applied to software development, and where software developers saw that the way that they were working wasn't functioning, because they would get a long list of requirements and functions that they were meant to build, then they built it, and afterwards when you measured the software, you realized about 90% of the required features were never used. So 90% of the code that they wrote was actually waste, and they thought that there must be a better way of working out what it is that people really need, rather than looking at what they say they want. Plus that technology moves so fast, so that if you're in a big software development project, you don't know at the start of the project what is going to be the best way of implementing, because new technology might appear underway that will make a more efficient way of working. So to summarize some of the important values and principles within Lean and Agile, we have sort of the core idea of Lean is efficiency, and in a lot of cases people equate efficiency with laying off staff, which is not really the idea. The idea behind efficiency is to utilize the resources you have in a maximized way to actually do what you do best and what you need to do best, which is to increase or maintain perceived customer value with less effort and less waste. And this actually means that you as an organization or as a project, you need to understand in full detail who your customer is. At Toyota, for instance, it is the car buyer. The person who buys the car is the customer. And it's important to know who is the person who you're building for, whether you're building a car or a service or a software or whatever it is that you're doing. You need to know who your customer is. Who is it that should consume the value that you produce? And then to make sure that it's their perception of value that steers the effort that you do. And then less work, so you need to continuously work at becoming more efficient in your processes. And you also need to work at minimizing waste, where waste is everything that you do as a company, an organization, a project group that does not lead to increased customer value. Then you have the self-organized team, which these are the ones who execute the work. And it's important that the people who execute the work must be the ones doing the detailed planning of the work that needs to be done, because they are the experts. They are the ones who have the knowledge of what needs to be done and in which order. So it's a bottom-up planning rather than a top-down planning. And that you have your control through transparency. I was actually recently in London at the big Gartner IT and PPM thing, and one of the things that they said, they say a lot of catchy things at Gartner. One of the things that they said was, Agile means that we need to stop lying to each other. So the project manager needs to stop lying to the stakeholders about whether or not they have full insight into the exact deliverables, and the team needs to stop lying to the project manager about the status of the current work. And when you can break through all those things that you say to keep each other calm, when you break through that, you get a different kind of control, a control that you have through actually knowing the reality rather than trying to give the impression that you're in control. So control through transparency rather than control through steering mechanisms or other things. And then continuous improvement. If we want to be able to increase perceived customer value with less work, we need to continually learn and continually improve. And one way to do this is to have the workflows visible for everyone. So in Toyota, for instance, if you walk into a room, you will immediately see what's being done in there, what are the goals, what is the current status. This should be visible for everyone. And this, what you use then, is Kanban-inspired visual management tools of various sorts. So, working lean is all about reducing waste and adding value. And in order to get there, and in order to get efficient, you need to work at your communication. This is what goes back to what we said at the beginning about the human speech thing. Human speech is an incredibly powerful tool. It's I would say our biggest biological advantage is the fact that we can speak and we can shape our world by the words that we use. If any of you have ever truly mastered another language, it doesn't matter if it's mathematics or if it's French or whatever, but if you have true mastery of another language, it opens doors to another way of thinking. It would actually change the neurons in your brain. So communication is an immensely powerful tool, and to get that working in your organization or in your project or in your work group will open up new possibilities. So communication is key. Visual management tools, to not have to spend a lot of time looking through status reports, other things. It should all be obvious who's doing what and what is the current status of the work. That shouldn't be something that you have to go looking for. Standardization, so to be able to have a template for a specific process that you can repeat and tweak and learn from. Because Kaizen, or continuous improvement, is something that needs to be implemented on every level. At Toyota, for instance, they have somebody in charge of Kaizen in every team. Another big thing is to make sure that we have a signaling system so that people feel comfortable talking about the current obstacles or problems or whatever you want to call them. But there are always going to be snags. Reality is much more complex than we can ever anticipate. I usually say when I draw up a plan for our product development or when I present our roadmap for even the rest of the year, I always say that this is our hypothesis right now. This is what we intend to do, but I know that we will get new information, and that new information will force us or give us the opportunity to change the direction that we're moving in. So because of that, we need to have continuous communication, and that continuous communication about what the current obstacles are needs to be transparent and work well. So Agile. Agile is what I just said about change. What most people think is that we have a right way of doing things and a wrong way of doing things. But Agile means that instead of saying that doing something wrong is failing, it means that doing something wrong is learning something that will eventually take us to where we want to go. So instead of having the idea that there's only one way to get to the goal, we have to let go of that idea and realize that whereas we have a vision of where we want to go, we don't currently know the best way. So we need to embrace failure and embrace change and make sure that we understand that every failure and every new turn will lead us in the right direction. So we look at the failure, see what did we learn and how can we move on to something that is closer to our ultimate vision. And at Project Place, we work with this agility, because agility can be a hard way of working. It's hard to communicate sometimes with your stakeholders because you have to have an enormous amount of trust to be able to work in this agile way. So we work Scrum, in which you divide your time into sprints, and it can be a chunk of time. It can be 2 weeks, it can be 4 weeks, it can be 3 months. But during that time, you give the team peace. So you plan for the next sprint, the things that are most prioritized right now. So you give the team peaceful and focused work. They get to break down the deliverables into individual tasks, and at the same time the stakeholders can get an estimated delivery for their things and continuous updates. So this is the way we work, and Scrum is a very popular way of working Agile. So it means that you sort of have a micro project for each sprint. So during the sprint you have your commitments, you have your time set out, and you know what you can expect. And in between the sprint you have time for the Kaizen, for the improvements, for understanding what we did, what worked well, what didn't work so well, what do we need to tweak for the next upcoming sprint. So here you can see, for instance, our June sprint. It's divided by a team. We have several teams, so they have committed to what they think that they can do in this particular chunk of time. And then they break it down into the little dots that you see on the sprint activity. The little dots then represent the cards on the Kanban board that the team has broken down the task into. So they break down this particular activity into individual little tasks on the Kanban board, because they are the best ones who know exactly how to execute. And the powerful thing is to leave that with the team. They give you an estimate of how much they can do during this particular sprint, and then for the next sprint you can have a new discussion so that you continually improve and continually get better. And we, from the product management, or you can be a project manager, we work on this level together with the stakeholders so that we can meet their expectations, and we invite stakeholders so that they can follow the progress of the sprint. And we can also talk about what's hypothetically planned for the next few sprints, given that our stakeholders can understand that this is something that might need to be updated given the new information that we have. So let's talk a little bit about why you should look at flow efficiency rather than resource efficiency, because this is a problem that often happens in organizations when you are not embracing these lean and agile principles. So earlier we talked about perceived customer value, and that is the key component of what we're trying to achieve. And I'm going to give you an example, and it's from the Swedish healthcare system. It's a customer value, and we define the customer as the patient in this case. So if you look at resource efficiency, you want everybody in the who works in the healthcare system to have 100% activity going on all the time. And in order to do that, you collect all the GPs in one unit, all the X-ray specialists in one unit, all the biopsy technicians in one unit, and then the cancer caregivers in another unit. And in all of these units, you can regulate the flow of patients so that everyone is employed 100% all the time. So the result of this way of working in healthcare was that it took, on average, 42 days for a patient with a suspected breast cancer to get a result. So what they did was they tried something different, and they tried to focus on what is best for the patient. How can the patient get the result as quickly as possible? So in the first case, which is the most common, you go to Unit A and they do your screening. The result of that is then sent to the X-ray experts in Unit B. You have to go home and you have to wait, and they will come back with a result that is one or the other. Then you go back to Unit C for a biopsy, and then you go back home, and in between that there's a wait, and this is what causes the 42 days. So what they did is they put all these people in one place, so whether a patient came in, their result was immediately going through all the stages, and you would get a result in a couple of hours instead. For the customer, this is incredible value, but it also means that some of the staff will not have work all of the time. But we're looking at customer value. We are not looking at maximizing resource efficiency. We're looking at maximizing customer value. And it means that sometimes we have to turn the way that we're thinking about our internal resources upside down. Now let me move on to Kanban boards, and let me start by talking about multitasking. A lot of us pride ourselves in our multitasking abilities, but new research suggests that there are some downsides, and I don't know if you know, it's becoming more and more popular to talk about the dangers of multitasking and how you should try to get into flow when you're working and focus on one thing at a time. And there's actually psychology behind this, because our brain, we have found, does not properly multitask. We think that is something we can do because we become very, very good at quickly switching context, and we can do it several times a second. So our perception is that we are doing two things at once, but really our brain is just switching, and this short lead time, however short it is, it's still there, and it makes us less efficient. It also increases the chances of making mistakes and missing important information and cues, because we are not truly multitasking. We are not truly taking in two things at once. For instance, if we're listening to something and having a conversation at the same time, if we're intently listening to something and intently talking to someone else, we will miss, because we can only focus on one thing at a time. So we will miss bits of the thing we're listening to, and we will miss bits of the conversation. And our brain is quite good at bridging the gaps, so we don't often notice, but we will still make mistakes and miss important information. And it also means that we need to fill all our working memory with the tasks that we're doing. And that means that we don't have enough space in the working memory for things like problem solving and creativity. So if we want to be solving problems and be creative, then we need to leave some of the working memory slots open for that to work at the same time as we're having this conversation or listening. So we think we can, but it is actually neurologically impossible. So multitasking can not only then increase the chance of making mistakes, it makes us slower, it also makes us make poor choices, and choices that we later regret. So if you want, you can email us afterwards and you can get the slides to look at some of the science behind this. So a Kanban board. I talked about Scrum, and I talked about the little dots on the line. Let's just go back quickly to the little dots. So you see here this Gantt chart, and you see the little dots on the line here. Each one of these dots represents a task that's needed to complete this activity. And these dots are actually cards on the team's Kanban board. So let's go back to the Kanban board. So Kanban is a Japanese word. It comes from Toyota, where they have Kanban boards everywhere, and it means visual sign. And the visual sign in our case is a card. One of the key components of Kanban is that it's a pull system, which means that it's the person who is going to execute the task who actually takes it on, and that causes commitment. It causes a lot more commitment in a person to go and grab the task and take it on themselves than to be assigned it by someone else. So it's a pull system. And it fosters this culture of continuous improvement. It makes people see, what are other people doing? What am I doing? Can I contribute? Can we talk about obstacles that we have? This card seems to have been stuck, and I have some input that I want to give. So continuous improvement, we can go back to the Kanban board for the last sprint and look at what happened there. It visualizes your work and your progress in a very simple and powerful way. If you've ever used it, you know you can have a physical one that's just post-it notes. This is how we started at Project Place. We had, post-it notes on a whiteboard. One of our problems with that was that there was no history. So it was wiped clean at the beginning of every sprint, and that wasn't very practical because then we started taking photographs of them to keep, but we didn't know what they looked like. So we lacked the history. We also lacked the capability of working efficiently with teams who were not co-located, so teams that were sitting in other continents, or teams that were not all sitting in the same place, like if somebody needed to work from home. So it's a great visualization, and how to have it digital is also very good. And you can quickly see the progress, right? You can just look at this board and you can get a quick feeling of how far we've come along with this. And it gives the sense of flow to stop starting and start finishing, get the focus on getting things done rather than starting work. There's a lot of science behind the stop starting, start finishing, but it also has to do with this multitasking problem. The more tasks that you have ongoing, they actually have cognitive load on you, because you have to keep thinking about the work that is ongoing. So if you can have less work ongoing, the chances are that you will be more efficient on the few pieces of work that are actually there. So in Project Place, for instance, you can create work in progress limits on the Kanban board that will give you a visual signal when there's too much work ongoing at one time, and to just tell the team to start focusing on finishing. And the success really comes through collaboration. So this is one board, one team. You know that all the work that is on this board is a team commitment. It's you as a team, whatever your team is called, that has committed to doing this specific work, to break it down, to take it on, to execute, and to automatically report through progress through moving the cards. And it also means that you can continuously deliver. So we work Scrum in most of our teams. We also have some teams that work Kanban. Kanban basically is the ultimate priority focus. So you only do what is most important right now. You only focus on the top story or the top deliverable right now, and everybody works together on that one thing. And once that's done, then you take the new top priority. It becomes, for us, very visible that the pure Kanban is a much faster way of getting delivery. However, we prefer Scrum anyway, because it gives the teams that little bit more space, and it makes it easier to communicate around expectations with stakeholders. In Kanban, it's very hard to know when priority 2 or priority 3 will get done. If you work in sprints, it's a little bit easier to talk to stakeholders about expected delivery and expectations around time estimates. But Kanban is great for continuous delivery, and that's the key, right? You want to deliver the value as quickly as possible to your customers. You don't want to sit and hold back your value and then let your customers wait for it. When that person goes into a Toyota dealership and buys a car, that value should be delivered almost immediately. And it's the same with any type of service. To be kept on hold, to be kept waiting for 42 days to get the results of whether or not you have cancer, and that is an waste for that customer. And just imagine all the anxiety, you might have to take time off work, we're destroying the value that we could have delivered much, much sooner. Plus we're losing 42 days of treatment time if this patient has cancer. So continuously you should work at getting the value to your customer as quickly as possible. So let me talk a little bit about the Zeigarnik effect. And this is what I talked about with the cognitive load of work in progress. So what we do is that all the things that we are currently working on are sort of held in a to-do list in our mind, or a work in progress list in our mind. So we have a psychological tendency to remember an uncompleted task rather than a completed one. Once it's done, it's done. We don't think about it anymore. We can let it go from our mind. So once you drag a card to the second column on the Kanban board, you saw the board, it had 3 columns. I'm going to go back. This is a basic Kanban board. It has planned work, ongoing work, completed work in 3 columns. In this case, the team gets to choose whatever name they need for their statuses. They've chosen to do, working on, and done. But it's planned work, ongoing work, completed work. And the Kanban board can have many statuses that are ongoing work. So it could be on hold, it can be in testing, it can be various states of progress of work. But really, at the basic level, all work is either planned, ongoing, or completed. So when we drag the card to the second column, when we start the work, that indicates that we have committed and we started to do something. That increases accountability because you put your face on there, you've said that I'm going to do it, so I'm accountable for it, and it reduces procrastination. We've started. We get that the beginning of flow. But dragging it to the last column gives us that cognitive relief, and it also physically reduces our stress hormones. To get stuff done is a wonderful feeling. It doesn't matter if it was something that you like doing or something but once it's completed, that's a wonderful feeling. So, and that's called the Zeigarnik effect. And it means that having this type of visualization will actually promote follow-through. Another key component for the Kanban board is that it's a natural gathering point. Like we bring up for our teams the Kanban board. We have a meeting every morning. It can be online or on-site, or sometimes it's even done via just communication in the software. So, but it's a natural gathering point to discuss issues, to solve ideas, or solve problems and learn. So you look at what's ongoing and what happens. And to make the problem about a card or a task rather than a person makes it so much easier to talk about, because it's no longer Brian or Sue or Carolina who is the problem. It's the task, and we need to together look at what can we do as a team, as a group, to solve the issue around this task. So it makes these uncomfortable feelings easier to handle. And also as a leader, it makes the behavior clearly visible. Is there somebody who takes on a lot of work but doesn't get it completed? And then you can talk about it, and you can talk about it in terms of the work that needs to be done rather than the person. So this way of organizing work is really powerful for accelerating learning and the ability to prioritize. And I just wanted to show you this. This is a Kanban board at Toyota. So it's the same principle, just in a slightly different format. So Kanban is a key component of Lean. It has been from the beginning. It started actually, it's a system for both inventory, for work, for all sorts. They use it to break down goals. It's ubiquitous in the Toyota production system, the Kanban board. And to have them digital is a great way of achieving success. It promotes your self-organizing teams. One team, one board is my personal mantra when I try to help people set this up. One team, one board, because it's about a team commitment, because as human beings we work best together. It's a self-organizing team. Give the team a deliverable, a task in charge of, and they can break it down into the individual cards and see the progress on the board, and you can talk about it. Put work in progress limits in. The most ardent multitasking opponents would say that you should only have one thing ongoing at a time. I might stretch to two, but try to limit your work in progress and you will find that the work will flow much, much quicker. It will promote efficiency by being visual. So transparency and efficiency go hand in hand, because the problems that you can't see, you can't deal with. So to be able to see and talk about problems every day, you can call them problems, you can call them issues, you can call them obstacles, but the things that are stopping you from getting work done. And it improves customer satisfaction. You can invite your customer to look at the board. You can invite your customer to look at the plan. And empowered teams, happy teams, motivated teams, teams that are in control of their own situation. I don't know if you've read Dan Pink's Drive, which is a great piece on human motivation. Motivation has three components: autonomy, mastery, and purpose. Empowered teams, autonomous teams, they have that way of feeling in charge of their own work situation, and it's a great motivation boost. And if you use the Kanban board connected to, for instance, the plan, where you can describe who the customer is, what the value is that they're getting out of this, then that gives you more purpose as a team. It's great to have them digital, because that means that you also give your staff or your people or your project group the ability to work from different locations, to work together even though they are not in the same office. You can invite your suppliers, your stakeholders, your customers into this to be part of the community to find the best solution. We have some time. I am happy to take questions about this.
Okay, so we have some questions that have come through. The first one, can you use a combination of Scrum and Kanban?
It's a great question. I mean, technically, Scrum it's the same process. It's just that Scrum gives you set the plan for a specific sprint, which is a chunk of time that you can decide. So we have some teams that work Kanban and some teams that work Scrum, depending on which development projects we have. So in that case, you can work both Scrum and Kanban, but one team can't work Scrum and Kanban at the same time. They can work Scrum for 3 months maybe, and then Kanban for 6 months. That's possible. But I find it best to give the team the flexibility, if you can, to use what they feel more comfortable with. Some teams feel more comfortable working, getting that commitment at the beginning of a sprint and then working through and being quite undisturbed during that piece of time. And some work better with the pressure of Kanban, of just executing and not thinking so much about what I'm going to do next week or next month.
Okay, great, thank you. Next question is, what are the common problems you face when using lean management?
I would say that the most common problem is a lack of trust from your stakeholders. So whoever your stakeholders are, to get the trust that you're going to get there, even though you cannot guarantee at the beginning of a project the usual constraints of scope, time and budget, that requires a level of trust from your stakeholders that can sometimes be difficult to obtain. So the change process of moving into, once they get used to it, I find it's not so hard. But to get the trust and the involvement from the stakeholders, for the stakeholders to realize that working in an agile project or working with agile projects requires a different level of stakeholder involvement to ensure that you're on the same vision still, that you're comfortable with the level of change and things like that. So I would say that's the biggest challenge.
Okay, great. And do you have any advice for those teams working globally across different time zones?
Oh, yes. I'm in that problem myself. I mean, we are in Stockholm, the product management. We have development teams in Stockholm, India, California. We have our stakeholders mainly in Austin. We have customers all over the world. And my best tips are, A, to find some sort of common communication platform. You need to have a way of ensuring that things are not stuck in email, that when I wake up in the morning, I can catch up on the things that have been ongoing overnight, and then I can do my work and communicate around that during the day, so that I feel happy that my stakeholders or my teams that are working after I go home, that they have access to the information about the decisions that have been made during the day. So a common communication platform, online meetings, when you need to talk to people, flexible working hours, if possible, in cultures where that's acceptable, and with work production leaders or people managers, I would say, people managers who are observant about work-life balance, because in some parts of the world you have a tendency to burn out your employees if you communicate too much with them outside office hours. And then, we couldn't do it without the digital Kanban boards. We literally couldn't.
Great, thank you. Next question, how can you use Agile for benefits management? Well,
benefits management is really what Agile is all about. It's about maximizing benefit. So my question would be, how would you do it without? You have to make sure at the beginning that you are crystal clear about what the benefits should be for this project. And then as you move into the actual execution, we normally talk about action creates clarity. So you have a vision, and then to have regular touch points where you discuss if we're still on target, has the target changed, where are we going? Those the first steps. I would really look at it from that sort of mapping, and it's really about being able to embrace change while staying on target. It's not easy, but with open and clear communication and being able to follow the progress and gaining that trust from your stakeholders, it's usually doable. And with any sort of change, I would say baby steps. I go 4% every day. If you can change something 4% every day in the right direction, then you will have a huge change over time. And 4% is not that much. It's not too much outside of people's comfort zones.
Excellent, thank you. How do you ensure that the Kanban card titles are relevant and can be understood by everyone?
Well, you can have a naming convention, but really as long as they're understood by the team and I would say sometimes with our teams I have literally no idea what this specific piece of work is. And I can ask, but for me it's enough to know that this is some part of the work, because I'm not particularly technical. I'm not a developer. I don't know JavaScript or database management or any of those things, but it's enough for me to know that this is a piece of work that needs to get done in order for us to complete the overall project. I don't need to understand the title of the card. I just need to understand if there are obstacles that I can help with, or if it's progressing.
Thank you. Next question. Would you use Scrum for large projects with multiple deadlines and priorities? And if not, how would you manage such a project?
I would absolutely use Scrum for that. We often have a combination of long-term and short-term projects, and we use Scrum or sometimes Kanban for all of them. What you have to do is just to break down that bigger deliverable or the bigger project into sprint-sized chunks. So make sure at the end of each sprint you have a deliverable, and that can be a part of something bigger. But certainly I would use Scrum. So we have some projects that it will take a part of a sprint to complete, and some projects that maybe take 5 or 6 sprints to complete or more.
Okay, next question. Have you ever applied the lean principles into a maintenance environment instead of a production line or project one?
Well, maintenance is part of our development, so yes. And in maintenance, I mean, the customer value is to have something to maintain perceived customer value for this, and to minimize the effort. So absolutely you could do lean for that. You just look at the process, break it down into the individual workflows, and look at ways that you could tweak those to ensure that the maintenance and the operations are working as smoothly as possible with minimized effort and waste.
Okay, great. So we have time for one more question. Can Prince2 and Lean Agile project management methodologies coexist?
Funny you should ask that. No, but I was talking to, we have a Prince2 project template in Project Place, and I was talking to our partner about updating it because it hasn't been for a while. And they're a Prince2 consultant, and they were like, yeah, we're all about Agile, you know, this is the way of the future. So I would say that absolutely not only could, but should be combined for maximum performance.